Welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to give you a deep understanding of the fundamentals of how the fretboard works. Okay, so I wrote out here, I have 17 frets. These two bars, that's the nut of the guitar, and then these are my open strings. So recall from an earlier lesson, okay, if you didn't watch that, check out the playlist in the description. E, A, D, G, B, E, those are the notes of my open strings. And then we also talked about the chromatic scale last time, my 12 notes, okay? So this E right here on the low E string, that is, it's called E2. So what we do is we write the note, which is E, and then after it is the number for the register, okay? And this is all based off the piano, okay? So I'll show you that in a minute. But for now, just understand this is E2, okay? And let me explain just the basic physics of how sound works, okay? When you play a note on an instrument, or right now I'm speaking, there's energy that my voice is generating, and my voice is propagating through the air. So what happens is the air, it vibrates back and forth, and we can measure the frequency in which it oscillates, okay? And if you measure the frequency of E2, it's 82 hertz. Hertz is cycles per second, so that means when you play that note on your guitar, it's going to vibrate 82 times in 1 second, okay? And this is what hertz looks like if you have a scientific background, or if you're curious, Hz, or 1/seconds, or inverse seconds, okay? Now, here's how it works. If you recall from the last video, if I go up 12 frets, okay, you see my double dots here. This is now E3. As the pitch gets higher and you go up 12, we've gone up an octave. Now, mathematically, what you do is you double the frequency from where you just came from. So E3 is 164 hertz, okay? Now, this is another key thing that's very, very important for you to understanding how the fretboard works. Take a look at this E3 right here. If I go back 5 frets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I move to the higher string, that is the exact same note. This is also E3, okay? Now, I can do the same thing here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then to the higher string. So E3, I can actually play on 3 different strings, okay? In contrast to piano, if you play E3 on the piano, there's just one key, that E key, and you have to play it a little bit to the left of the middle of the keyboard. If you play E anywhere else, you're in the wrong register, okay? So that's one of the things that makes the guitar fundamentally different from the piano, and a more difficult instrument to learn, is there's a lot of redundancy in guitar, and it can be an advantage, but it can also be a disadvantage, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But let's pick it up where we were. We're at E3. You might say to yourself, hey, well, can I play E3 on the G string? Well, look, if I try to go back, I only have 2 frets here, because keep in mind, imagine that the open string is like another fret. So because I don't have 5 here, I cannot play E3 on the G string, okay? So E2 we can only play in one place, E3 we can play in 3. That's interesting, right? Now, if we're at E3, keep in mind, on a single string we can go up 12. That must be E4. Now, if I'm at E4, I can do the same trick that I showed you here. I can go back 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and to the higher string. There's E4 again. Now, this is where it changes a little bit. The G and the B string, for reasons that I'll explain in a later video when we get to intervals, it's not 5 frets, it's 4. Okay, so this is 0 right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and you go to the higher string. There's E4. Now we're going to go back to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? Now again, this is E4. So if I go up 12, there's E5. if you have a guitar that has 24 frets, E6 is going to be somewhere over here. Now mathematically, we started at 82, we doubled it to 164, we doubled it again to 328, then we doubled it again to 656, and then to 1312. Okay? So that's the basics of how sound works in relation to playing a musical instrument. Okay? Now, you should also try and figure out the same note going in the opposite direction. So if I'm playing E4 over here, the rule before was if you're starting on a lower string and you go to the next higher adjacent string, you go back 5 and then you go to the higher string. That's the rule. So now we're going to do the inverse of that. We're starting on a higher string, we're going to a lower string. So I need to go up 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm on the B going to the G. Those are the strings that are always going to be a little bit funky, okay? So it's going to be 4 here. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then look, you get another E4 here. There's another one over here. If I had drawn more frets, there's another one over here. And then if I have 24 frets on my guitar, I have another one over here. So E4 is a pitch that you can actually play on every single string. Okay, which is very interesting. Now, let me explain something. I touched on this in the first video. When you play E2 and then you go to the high E string, you're always going to have the same note here, but it's going to be up 2 octaves. Okay, so that's just something that you should be aware of. Because anything that we do most of the time with guitar is we're playing vertical patterns. Like when I start getting into scales and stuff, they're all vertical. So you should realize vertical patterns, most of them are in 2 octaves, okay? If you want to play 3 octaves, you have to traverse the entire neck in a horizontal fashion because look, here's E2, E5 is all the way up here. So I would have to work my way up this way. Now, I'm going to give you, later in the video, I'm actually going to pull the guitar out and do a bunch of demonstrations and exercises for how you can try to integrate this into your brain. But for now, let me just say, let's go back to the fact that we can play E4 on every single string, right? So that's one of the things that's unique about guitar. Now, if you play E4 here and you play it on the low E string, if you have 24 frets, you'll notice that they don't sound the same. What do they have in common? Well, they're both E4. So what does that mean? Well, it means that they both have 328 cycles per second. Okay? But if you play it here, because this string is very thin, and it's an unwound string, if you look at your top 3 strings, you'll notice that they're just a piece of steel. That's all it is. It's a piece of steel that they stretch very, very thin. Okay? But these 3 strings, these are your wound strings. Okay, so they take that original string and then they wrap another wire around it, and those are your wound strings. Now, you can also get a G string that's wound if you want, like a lot of jazz players do that. But basically, what you want to realize is you're always going to get a darker tone from wound strings. The nice thing about unwound strings, they're easier to bend. Okay, so that's why a lot of players will play with an unwound string on the G string. You know, like blues players and stuff like that. Jazz players don't typically do as much bending, so they just want that that dark, smoky, beautiful tone. Now, let me explain something else to you, okay? EQ, you've heard of an equalizer probably. In your car, you have a very rudimentary EQ. You have lows, mids, and highs probably that you can adjust when you're listening to the music. Low, they might call it bass. High, they might call it treble, okay? So basically how that works is if you've ever cranked up the bass, you know, you'll hear that, you'll really feel it in your body. You'll feel those low frequencies vibrating. Keep in mind, these frequencies that we're vibrating are very, very low. Okay, so the lower the frequency, the more you're going to feel it. Higher frequencies, you feel it higher up in your body, but it doesn't put your the cells in your body into vibration as much as low frequencies. Like if I'm blasting the bass, the whole house will shake. And then mid, you're going to get a little bit more of a feeling than higher treble. Okay. But the reason I'm explaining this to you, other than the fact that it's something you should know, is if you play E4 here, because you're playing it on the top string, that's another term that I need to mention here. The top string is the highest string, the high E string. Okay, a lot of people get that confused. This is the low string. Okay, and they get confused because when they're holding the guitar, this string is higher. So they think, oh, that's the higher string. No, everything in music is based off of the pitch, the sound. So because these notes are higher, we call them the high string or the top, okay? So if I play E4 on this string, because it's an unwound string and it's very thin, it's going to have a very treble dominant frequency, okay? But if I play it way over here, because it's on a wound string, it's going to have more bass frequencies and more mids, whereas this is going to be mostly trebles, okay? That idea, which is that we can take two notes that have the exact same frequency, and depending on what instrument we play them on, or here we're even playing them on the same instrument, the guitar, we're just playing on different strings, the fact that we can get them to sound so much different, that's a term called timbre, okay? It explains why if you play the same pitch on a violin or on guitar, they're not going to sound the same, okay? Now, scientifically, and I'm not going to get into this too deep because it's not really that important right now, but when you play a note, there's the main frequency. We call that the fundamental, okay? But that note, it's what registers in your brain is what you're hearing, okay? It's the dominant frequency. But there's other frequencies when you hit a note. Doesn't matter what instrument you play, by the way. There's other frequencies that are also going to ring, okay? And these are called harmonics or partials. And depending on what kind of an instrument you're playing, you may get, like, see these low partials over here? You may get a lot of low partial. You may just get a tiny bit. So depending on the instrument, you're going to have a distribution here of all these different partials. And that is the fundamental reason why you can play middle C. An orchestra can play middle C on 30 different instruments and they all sound different, okay? Again, it's the same pitch. The frequency is the same, but because these partials are different, the timbre is different. It sounds different. And it's also why orchestras are so powerful. You know, they create that visceral emotional reaction within us. There's a tremendous amount of variety going on. Something else that I wanted to say, I touched on in the first video about how the guitar is a very difficult instrument, and this is one of the main reasons why, okay? So imagine that you're reading music, okay? If you play piano and somebody puts a middle C on the staff, okay? If here's my staff, somebody puts a middle C here, you know as a pianist there's one key that you can play to play that note, okay? Middle C, by the way, is C4. It's C in the fourth register. It's right in the middle of the keyboard, okay? I'll show you that. Now, if I want to try to play this pitch on guitar, here's where it's located, C4, okay? So I can play it on the B string, and using that trick that I showed you earlier, going to a lower string, I have to go up 4. I can play it here. Now I'm going up 5, going up 5 again, going up 5 again. So I can literally play middle C, which is a very common note that appears in all sorts of music, because it's in the middle. I'm not playing something way off on the ends. I can play this note on almost every string, 5 strings. So if I want to practice getting better at reading music and say, you know, I want to be a professional musician, so I'm serious about this, I have to train my brain when I see this note to put my finger here, but also to put it here maybe. You know, because if I'm playing guitar and I'm down in this zone of the fretboard, I would want to play it here. But I could also play it here. Depending on what I'm playing, it might be more advantageous to play it here. Okay? It's going to depend on what I was just playing. Maybe it's easier to play it here than here. But I also have to learn how to play it here. Okay? And then I have to learn how to play it here, and I have to learn how to play it here. So you look at that and you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so a guitar player has to do 5 times as much work as what a piano player would do to play the same notes, to learn to be a fluent reader. But in reality, it's much, much worse than that, okay? Because just imagine what your brain is trying to do. Your brain is trying to take this symbol and then tell your brain, okay, we know where C is. Maybe you're thinking C is here, but you're not over there. You're over here. So you need to train your brain 5 different ways, but because there's that optionality there, it's very hard just to react. And I think this is why it's so hard to read on guitar. This is the fundamental reason why. Okay, like everywhere you go, pianists, they're incredible sight readers. They're reading two clefs. They're reading, big chords, and they don't have any problem. And then you put sheet music in front of a guitar player, and they can barely play anything. This is why. Do you have any idea how much labor it is to learn all of this? Now, it's not saying that it can't be done, okay? And I'm going to eventually talk about how to read music. But what I recommend for everybody, you don't have to learn to read music, especially nowadays if you want to play guitar. But I do think it's a good idea for people just to learn the basics. Like you could pick up Hal Leonard Book 1 and just work your way through that. If people are interested, I might create my own book, because I can't show you how I would work out of their book because of copyright. So I would have to create my own book, and then I could teach you exactly how I would learn to read. But basically, you would have to learn to read in all of these places. But what I was saying is, for everybody, even people that don't want to be serious about learning to read, it's valuable to learn to read over here. Okay? Because when you learn to read, you're learning a lot of things. You're not just learning the skill to read. You're learning the basic terminology of music, tempo markings, time signature, quarter notes. Now, I'm going to do all of that in this course anyways, so you can learn it anyways. You don't have to learn to read, but it is, it's a good skill to have. A couple other things that I want to explain, some basic terminology. Position is something that you should be aware of in guitar. It's an important term. See, I have here my 3rd fret. So imagine that I'm playing some sort of a scale, let's say, here, where my index finger is covering the 3rd fret, my middle the 4th, my ring the 5th, and my pinky the 6th. That's called playing in 3rd position, okay? Now, a lot of times you can cover 4 frets because you have 4 fingers, but you can typically cover 5, okay? So let's say I'm covering 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and then maybe occasionally I stretch and I play an extra note with my pinky, okay? But just understand that position is very important, because I'm going to use that term all the time to explain what I'm doing. So you have to know, if I say I'm in 3rd position, that means my index finger is covering the notes on the 3rd fret, okay? Now, another thing that I wanted to say is, keep in mind this trick that I showed you here. This is how to find the same exact pitch in the same register. But here's another trick that you should know. This is an easy way to find an octave, okay? If I play a note, if I go up 2 frets and then up 2 strings, that's an octave, okay? Here's another one here. Here's another one here. Now, if you look at this note here, you would expect it to be here, right? If we go up 2 and then up 2 strings, but it's not, it's here. The reason for that, again, I'll talk about this later in more detail when we cover intervals, but because the G and the B string are funky, anytime you traverse through that path, like we're going from the D string to the B, that means we're passing from D to G to B. The relationship is always going to change of all these little shortcuts that I'm showing you. Okay, so in this case, you have to go up 3. So all I want you to do at this point is just memorize it. Okay, but what you should try to do is find octaves all over the fretboard. You already should know from an earlier lesson that if you go up 12 notes on the same string, that's an octave. Okay, and now also I'm telling you, if you play a string and then you skip a string, like here we're skipping the A string, we're going right to the D. If I go up 2 and then to 2 higher strings, that's also an octave. So you should know right now 2 ways to play an octave. There's more. I'll cover that in a later class. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to show you these concepts on the piano. So here's the entire range of the piano. Now in the middle here, to the left of the 2 black keys in the middle, that's C4. That's middle C. So we got C3 over here, C2. If this is C2, D2, E2, that's the lowest note we have on the guitar. So you can see all these extra notes we can't play on guitar unless you specifically down tune or you have like a 7 or an 8 string guitar or something. So E2, E3, E4, E5, E6. And yes, this piano is really out of tune. But that is the entire range of the guitar. So you can see how much more compressed the range is versus the piano. All right, so we're going to try and do more of this stuff on guitar. And let me know what you like in terms of the camera. Like, see how you can see my face? I can zoom out to get my face in the frame, but I figured people would prefer seeing the close-up, okay? So, you know, I can shoot like this, or I can zoom in a little bit. Now, this is how I was shooting videos in the first video. So you can really see what I'm doing with a great level of detail. So, you know, leave a comment for me. I also want to thank everybody because this is the 3rd video that I'm making. In 2 days, my first video got 100 views, and I already got like 10 subscribers off of it. So, I mean, I've been posting like videos of me playing music for years and haven't really gotten a lot of response. I mean, I've got some people that follow me, but, you know, I always knew that I was a better teacher than a player. So, you know, this is just confirmation of that. But thank you to everybody that has subscribed, the comments. But, you know, give me feedback. I'm doing everything on my iPhone right now, and it's working out good. So let's talk about some of these ideas, okay? So here's what I want to try to do. I'm going to play 12, 15, 17, 19. I'm going to play the 19th fret on the E string, okay? And I want you to try to figure out what note that is. So we know 12 is E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B. Now, I want you to try to practice that trick that I showed you earlier, finding the identical pitch in the same register. So I'm going to play my note. I'm going to go back 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and to the higher string. Now look, you can listen to what you just did. Ba-na, ba-na. See how the frequency of what I'm singing is the same? Ba-na. But again, the timbre is slightly different. This one's a little bit brighter. Now, we can do the same thing again here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So far we have 1, 2, 3. This one's a lot brighter, right? You hear that? Same frequency. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now I'm on the G string here and I'm going to the B string. So 1, 2, 3, 4, open. So So I have here, look at that, same frequency. Look at how different it sounds, okay? So you should try and do that on your own. Another thing that we talked about was how to find octaves. So say I play this F here, E, F, right? See if you can figure out how to do the octave trick. You go up 2 frets and then up 2 strings. 1, 2, 1, 2. So here's my octave. And when you play the notes of an octave at the same time, they blend very well together. That's because the frequencies are multiples of one another. Whatever this frequency is, I don't know exactly what it is. Let's call it 90. Okay, this one's 180. Okay, if I play this, you can hear those notes do not blend well together. Okay, these do. So hopefully you can hear the difference between that. So if you know the notes of the open strings, if you have that memorized, and you can apply the chromatic scale, you can find any note on the fretboard, right? So you should try and quiz yourself, like, hey, see if you can find C sharp on the A string. You can pause the video if you want. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to do it. A sharp, B, C, C sharp, right? Let's try another one. See if you can find E on the G string. G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, right? Now, as you get good at this, you can pick one note and try and find that note everywhere on the fretboard. Like, let's try it with E. We know E's over here. We know we can go up 12 frets and find another E. Now, I'm on this string. I only have 10 more frets here, so I've exhausted this string, right? But now this pitch, I know that I can go back 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hey, so that's E. Now, if you look, I'm on the 7th fret. 7 plus 12 is 19. I have 22 frets, so that means if I go up here, 15, 17, 19. Right? Now I'm over here. Here's an E. I can do the same trick. I can go back 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's another E. Now I can go up 12. Right? Can't go up another 12. But what I can do is I can go back 5 from here, right? I can't go back 5 from here. I only have 2 frets here. But I can go back 5 from here. So let's try that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's another one. Now, I'm on the 9th fret. 9 plus 12 is 21. So I can play another one up here. Right? Or I can go back 4 on this string. Because, again, I'm going from the G to the B. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Now I'm on the 5th string of the B. I can go up 12. There's another one. Now right here, I can go back 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then up 12. Okay? So we just literally found every single E on the fretboard. Now, this is a great way to learn your notes on the fretboard. I don't think it's the best way to learn, but it's a pretty good way. So if you do that in conjunction with some other things that I'll show you, I will show you in a later video exactly how I would practice learning the notes. And if you do that and you put in the work, I don't think it'll take you that long. Maybe a few months. All right. Let's try and find some more octaves. Let's try and find an octave off C on the A string. A sharp, B, C. So here's my octave here. See how they blend well together? Out of tune, blend well. By the way, this is called consonance, when 2 notes blend well together. Dissonance, dissonance, consonance, okay? See if you can find an octave for F sharp off of the A string. And instead of starting down here, I want you to start at 12 and work your way backwards. So here's what that looks like. A, G sharp, G, F sharp. Keep in mind, you really should be pausing the video here, not just watching me. Okay? Let's try one where we're going to the string that has the funky relationship. Okay? So let's try and play an F off of the D string. D, D sharp, E, F. Normally it would look like this, right? So I have to go up another one here. So it's 3 and then 2. What about B flat off of the G string? G, G sharp, A sharp, which is also B flat. Because look, A sharp, B, B, B flat. Now, again, I'm going from, see how we're crossing from the G to the B? So it's not going to be this. It's going to be this. Okay? This looks nice. Sorry for that outburst. All right, so I want to demonstrate. Remember how I was talking about how hard it is to read music on guitar? I want to show you exactly what I'm talking about. So at this point, you know what the alphabet is. It's just A through G. So I'll give you a dirty little secret. If you play the alphabet, but you start and end on C, that's called a C major scale. Okay, and of course, this is something I'll cover pretty soon, but so what I'm going to do is, this is C4. I'm going to play C3. So I'll start off by playing it on just one string. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay, you might have also heard it do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, right? C, D, E, F, G, F, E, D, C, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, B, C. Very bright, beautiful, happy scale. Okay? Now, I just played the whole thing on one string, and how many octaves did I play? Well, that was one octave, and this is maybe like a half. So I played like 1.5 octaves on one string. Now, let me just show you how many different ways you can play that scale. And I'm only going to play it in one octave, so it's going to be 8 notes. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That's one way. Now look, I could go like this. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. See? I switched. I played the F, then I switched to this string. I played the G over here. Well, what about instead of playing the D here, I could play it here. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Right? What about this? C, D, E, F. Instead of playing the G here, I can play it open. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Or I could play C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. There's another note. Same note, C, C. Now, I'm literally just scratching the surface. There's like, I don't know how many combinations, but it's a crazy amount of combinations. What about instead of playing this C over here, what if I go to the lower string and then up 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, look here. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So all of these, you know, this is why when you study guitar, there's so many patterns for everything. There's like a million patterns. So, look, I can play the scale on one string. I can play the scale on 2 strings where I'm going horizontal, I can play the whole thing vertical. Remember that position thing that I mentioned here? So right now, I'm in 7th position. I played the entire scale in 1 octave in 7th position. And I started on my middle finger. Well, what if I start on my index finger? There's another pattern, right? Right? There's another one. Look, what if I start on my pinky? Right? There's another one. I could even go like this. Now, why would you ever do that? You wouldn't. There's no reason to do it. But the point is wow, there's a lot of things, a lot of ways that we can do things. And that's what kind of, it increases the cognitive load on your brain when you have a million different options, okay? It's like, what do they call it? Paralysis by analysis, or that's not exactly what I'm thinking of, but just think of it like cognitive load, okay? If you were a piano player and they asked you to play a C major scale, all you would literally do is just play the white keys in a row. And then when you go to the next register, it's the same thing. So the guitar it's like this very complicated matrix that we're trying to decode, okay? And that's why I went into as much detail with these first few lessons, because most people don't even know what I've taught you in these 3 lessons. So, I mean, how could you ever be good if you don't know that? You really can't. One other thing that I want you to try to do is, I talked about this on the whiteboard. Remember that whole trick of, hey, we're going to go back 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then up a string. That's the same pitch. Try and do that in reverse. So, like, if we start with E, we go to the lower string, then we go up 5. They should sound the same, which they do, okay? Now, I'm on the funky string, so I got to do the same thing, but go up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. See how they sound the same? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So practice all that on your own. All right, so we covered a lot today. I hope you enjoyed that. Make sure to check out the full playlist. Check out the description. This is part of a completely comprehensive course that is going to take you from total beginner and teach you everything that you need to know in excruciating detail. So make sure if you like the video, you subscribe for more. Thanks again.